Kent Turkington,
Hey man, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Top notch.
It has been a while. Here we are. Let's do this. This is probably the most exciting changes we've seen in real estate in a decade or so,
Yeah,
I
if you go
think.
back to, it's been close to 10 years when the big rule changes affected the mortgage side of things and disclosures and things to make it so that it's more protective for the consumer. That was big stuff. This is equally as important, or maybe even more so.
It really is because it's affecting everybody, those looking to buy, those in home ownership right now, those that may be inheriting properties or something like that, or landlords, et cetera. So let's get right into it. The National Association of Realtors lost their settlement. They were taken to court in regards to the standard 6% commission, typically three buy side, three listing side compensation paid out to real estate agents. And what that really means is they can no longer advertise on the MLS what they can pay the buy side compensation. So long-winded. What's your quick take there after I babbled that?
Well, parts of this are not going to change much, and parts of this are going to change a ton. But the way it was done before, it was ruled that in essence, people were colluding to make sure that the commission rates stayed at an elevated rate, and they didn't make it as apparent for consumers to understand it. So the industry forever has said that you can work with a buyer's agent and you don't pay them anything, that it's either free or it's paid for by the seller. Um, this lawsuit, the result of that is now saying, hey, everybody's going to acknowledge who they're paying. So the person that's selling a home is going to pay the person that has a sign in the yard. Um, the person that is buying the home may have to pay their real estate agent if the seller isn't willing to pay them. And it's kind of bringing it to the forefront where it was just sloughed under the rug for years. Whether
Uh,
that was good or bad, that's the change.
well, I think the hard part for the consumer over the last 3, 4, 5 years is home values have exploded higher, and in some areas of the country doubled, and not much difference in workload, probably less with the technology
It's
components that could come into play.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends what real estate agent you speak with, but when homes have multiple offers within 3 to 4 days, the amount of work involved has to be less because the time frame is less. So yes, values are up, commissions paid out are up, and the time frame or the work involved, if you're working with a seller, is less.
Not in my market, is what we always
Yeah,
say.
buyers side is different, right? Because you're competing and you may take you 4 or 5 cracks before you actually win. So that's a little bit more work maybe on that side.
Oh my gosh, this is a huge topic. Let's start with the sell side. You're listing your home, you're either moving, you're upsizing, downsizing, you're putting your home on the market, and you're meeting with that real estate agent. What happens now? What's the quick version of August 17th when the rule takes place versus the previous decades? How does it
Um,
look different?
yeah, so in the past, the person you're going to work with to sell your home says, we're going to need to pay, you're going to need to pay 6% in commissions. I am going to keep three of that, and we're going to offer 3% to the agent that brings in a buyer. Um, Now the seller has to have communication with the listing agent to say, I'm going to agree to what I'm going to pay you. And then we're going to decide what I may or may not be willing to pay somebody to bring a buyer's agent, but that amount may not be listed. So it's going to show up when somebody looks for a property, their real estate agent, the buyer's real estate agent is going to pull up homes, and there's not going to be a commission detailed on there of what they're going to earn. So it all has to be negotiated on the purchase agreement.
All right, so steering comes into play as you're bringing this up, and seller A is offering 3% or in the old way, 6%. Seller
Right.
B is offering 5%. Seller C is offering 4%. Buyers realtors were, in theory, according to this lawsuit, steering them to the 6% or the larger commissions to look
I
at
am
those
not going to show
homes.
you homes that aren't going to pay me the 3% that I want to get paid.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so if you're choosing to list the home, all you have to, in theory, worry about is how much do you want to pay the person that's representing you. Um, Now, what do we think is going to happen here? Is that 3% still going to be in play? Or now that everything is negotiable, our seller is going to take the listing agents to task and say, hey, what is it that you're doing for me? Give me the different tiers of services that you provide for, say, 1% or 2% or 3%. You see that coming into play?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the more this gets into mainstream and people understand that it's a topic, it's going to bring more negotiation into play than what we've seen before. So it has to increase. To the extent or how much that does remains to be seen. But, in the past, well, the industry standard is this. So just press hard and sign and we'll get your home sold. And, you know, different markets have different environments. Again, in Michigan, it's still a heavily weighted seller's market. So, because most real estate agents go in and say, oh, this is a great property and this is what we should get. And it's going to sell in a very short period of time. They almost shoot themselves in the foot there of saying, hey, there's not a lot of work involved in this to a certain aspect. So we'll see how that's going to unfold.
All right, so let's swing over to the buy side where really the bulk of the rule changes here are we're going to work in a gray area for a period of time until everybody gets comfortable communicating their message or their pitch on what they think they should be paid now that they can't say, don't worry about it, I'm being paid by the seller.
Right.
Or don't worry about it, it's free. My services are free. You don't have to pay for them. Seller pays for it. When in reality, the price of the home went up
Right.
and the buyer was paying for it
The
all
whole time.
along.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to buy a home. Ken, I'm coming to you to get pre-approved. I'm not sure what I qualify for. I've talked to Agent John Doe, who I think is going to help me. What do you do now from the lending side when you're helping the pre-approved buyer get ready?
Yeah, so we obviously talk about their financial circumstances, but now we're also asking to say, get me a copy of that buyer's agency agreement that you've agreed to, that details what you've agreed to pay your agent. And now what we have to do is take into account those numbers on our loan projections, because if you're agreeing to pay your buyer's agent 3% and the seller is only willing to pay 1.5% to your side, that now we've got a cash to close that we have to take into account. So it's a little bit different than before, where now we have to make sure that we're taking into account what they're going to pay their agent if the seller is not willing to pay the entire sum.
All right, super confusing there. Let's take a step back for a second. There's really two agreements the buyer can sign. There's a non-exclusive buyer's agreement and then an exclusive buyer's agreement, correct?
I believe that's the case.
Okay. Non-exclusive means you're still agreeing what you're going to pay that person,
But you can go find somebody else as well, right?
You have the ability to shop different realtors to see what their services and or commission fees that they're charging, how those line up to a person that maybe you've already spoken to. So that's going to be the most popular buyer side agreement that you're going to sign. It's going to be the non-exclusive. Now, the exclusive means you agreed to pay XYZ to that agent, whether you use their services or not, if you close on a home regardless.
For a certain period of time.
Yeah. And you'll see that we will in the future run you through those different agreements and show you what they look like and how they break down. But again, the change is before you visit homes, you are going to work and look each other in the eye, you and the real estate agent, and agree what you're going to pay them. It may be out of your pocket or you're bringing it to the closing table. I should say, not out of your pocket. You're bringing it the lump sum to the closing table, or you may be able to get some seller concessions to offset some of your other closing costs to keep your cash to close a little bit lower. But that remains to be seen based on the strength of your offer and the ultimate home that you choose to bid on, and if you do indeed win the offer. Wow.
Yeah, it's you know, a buyer's agency has been around for a while. It's just this lawsuit and the result of the lawsuit has made it so that now that agreement has to be signed even before you go look at a home, which there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's just increasing transparency, and it's all a good thing.
Well, the thing that you and I have been laughing about for the last couple of weeks is typically you're working with a real estate agent and they're going to say, oh, here's 3 cards to 3 different mortgage people. Go ahead and shop for the best rate, best closing cost option, whoever you get along with best. Go ahead and shop for that mortgage. How is that different now? Is
Oh,
this
we get to do the same thing. Send me your buyer's agency agreement. Okay, you I don't know how you found them, but you said that you'll pay them 3%. And they say, well, yeah. And I said, well, we may have 3 or 4 people that would only charge you 2. Are you interested in talking to them to make sure you're not overpaying?
So they can get out of the agreement that they signed with the current realtor only if it's a non-exclusive.
Right.
So very important if you're going to look at a home, to sign a non-exclusive buyer agreement. That way you have the ability to still search around, and there may be somebody that's a better fit for your situation than the person that originally showed you the home.
So the other part, just to drill down on it, the fee that you agreed, if you're a buyer and you agree to pay a fee to your real estate agent, even if the seller's paying it, that's still relevant. So if you agree to pay your agent 2% and the seller says, I'll pay 3%, that means you get 1% of the purchase price credited towards your other funds needed to close. So it is relevant, even if the seller's paying all commissions.
Gotcha.
So, you know, I only say that because I could see some realtors out there, well, it's 3% and we'll make sure that the seller's paying it. So it doesn't affect you. You don't have to worry about it. Well, no, it actually does, because you can either get the purchase price for 1% lower or get that 1% applied towards your closing fees. But Rocket Mortgage has been a master at this for the last, gosh, I don't know, it may be close to a year, but
a while.
Did you say when you were watching the Olympics, or was it? No, it was golf.
It was
golf.
Weekend.
The Rocket commercials, which is if you use Rocket Mortgage and Rocket Real Estate, it's a $10,000 check they'll give you towards your prepaids. Now Rocket's doing that so that they can find a way to get the client away from paying attention to their mortgage fees. So, but still, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of juice there. That can be applied towards
Howard Hanna
buyer side of things.
Sorry to interrupt. Howard Hanna, another large brokerage, is offering 0.5% if you use one of their preferred lenders to offset. Use our real estate agent, will kick in 0.5% of your purchase price to offset some of your mortgage costs if you use one of our lenders. Everybody's doing it. So that thing behind me, there we go. Do we see that coming down once this goes into effect? Okay.
Yes. Now, again, it's going to depend on price points, right? Because
markets
or markets. But I think we slept over, EXP, one of the largest real estate companies in the country. They've said that they're on any of their listings, they're not going to offer buyers agents any compensation on their listings. Now, some of that, I think a big part of that is associated with compliance and legalities, It doesn't mean they'll never pay it, but it just means on any listings, we're not offering to pay anything. You can write it in the purchase agreement. It may be negotiated, but we want to have a clear stance on this so that we don't violate any of the court rulings from the settlement. And we want to make sure that we're staying out of court moving forward to keep it simple and straightforward.
Well, believe it or not, we're gonna have people recording phone calls now of what's verbally being said or not said. And there are penalties involved for those that aren't following the rules. So this is a big deal. They're trying to uncouple the cooperative commissions that have been being paid for a long time now, to make it easier on the consumer. Ultimately, those that are in the industry are saying this is making it harder on the consumer. I don't believe that, but
Well, it's just change, right? You've got to get through this change. No different than we had to go through 10 years ago with the disclosure rules and making sure that documents were received 3 days before closing. And that seemed like it was going to be a big deal, but it was taken in, and we got through that in a short period of time. So it's just people getting used to the new norm, and it's all a good thing.
all right, so we're gonna have a ton more on this topic. We're gonna sign off here, but again, the last thing that we recommend at this point going forward is to sign a non-exclusive buyer's agreement with the agent that you're using to look at your first home that you go in. Then you will get a better feel for how this is gonna play out, and then also just call us. We'll help you walk
Totally.
through it.
Yeah,
Easy
that
breezy.
process is a relationship. You got to make sure you got the right person, and they have to make sure they're working with the right people. So that non-exclusive is a brilliant idea.
All right, man. Good catching up. We'll talk soon.
See ya.
Bye.